Thank you all for coming out, hanging out. It's been a great weekend. If you're unfamiliar, I'm Jeff. I'm the host of the Strangeology podcast, and I've had so much fun this weekend. I've gotten to meet so many different personalities and experts in the field of ufology and high strangeness. And I hope you've all gotten to check out some really great panels and lectures and intensives this morning. So if you're unfamiliar, my podcast, I cover a lot of things. I do a lot of research into high strangeness, and it's something that's always kind of been a part of my life and a part of my interest. Now, at the end of the presentation today, if we have time, I'll have 5 to 10 minutes. If anyone has any questions, there'll be a microphone over in the corner, and we can just chat and have some fun. You can find all my info at strangeology.com, and I've got a newsletter information that I send out that I'll monthly new episodes, what I'm up to, where I'm going to be for different events, and all that stuff. And hopefully you all had a chance to stop by my table. Big shout out to my buddy Easton, who came out with me to help out today. And yeah, this has been great. So we're going to have some fun. I know some of you, before we started here, were like, I want to hear about cryptids. This is a UFO event, and so we're veering off the path, but it's going to tie together. I talk about cryptids a lot on my show, but also alien and UFO cases as well. And like some of you out there, I've had my own experiences in life that I can't quite explain. Strange lights or craft in the sky, such as a flying triangle that I drove right under with my brother when I was 13 years old, driving home one night. Still can't explain it to this day. And from that to unknown creatures in the woods that shouldn't be in the northeast part of the country, as well as paranormal activity in the home. Some of us really seem more susceptible to perceiving strange and unexplained phenomena than others. Now, let's set the scene here. Imagine it's twilight. We're in the desert. You're looking at the mountains. You feel that something is out there watching you. In the distance, there might be a hulking, hairy humanoid figure, a Bigfoot, which blurs behind the rocks. You don't quite know what it is. And these things are always a little bit blurry, aren't they? And above, a strange light flickers in the sky. And we have to ask ourselves, are these events unrelated, or are they part of a larger puzzle? So today, we're going to dive into this idea with cryptids and UFOs and the hidden threads that might connect them. The topic here being, of course, cryptids, UFOs, and the dimensional nexus. And we're going to try, at least in the time that we have for today, to make some connections and see what's really going on out there. So to start, let's do a brief overview of cryptozoology for those who might not be familiar. Whether you're a seasoned Fortean who's cataloged strange tales for years, or you're a UFO researcher who's spent nights out there scanning the skies, watching videos online, or if you're a newcomer just drawn by curiosity, looking to learn more, looking to find out the truth. Are people out there really seeing these things? What's going on? There's something here for everyone today. Now, cryptozoology literally means the study of hidden animals, from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden, and of course, zoology, the study of animals. It's a field that's devoted to creatures that science hasn't yet verified, creatures that we call cryptids, or some might refer to them as monsters. I prefer the term cryptid. It's a little less scary. Now, these range from familiar names to creatures like Bigfoot. It's a household name. Everybody knows Bigfoot. The Loch Ness Monster or Nessie, as well as El Chupacabra, to lesser-known regional cryptids and legends whispered about in small towns and the rural parts of our country, the world, things that are mysterious in the forest. Now, mainstream science often labels cryptozoology as pseudoscience due to its elusive, fragmentary nature of the evidence. I mean, the spirit of cryptozoology is rooted in open-minded exploration, which bleeds folklore, eyewitness reports, photos, videos, tracks, and trace evidence to investigate the unexplained. And because there's not solid evidence out there is why it's really considered a pseudoscience. But we have a lot of people out there that are looking to find the answers. And of course, a couple other examples we have of cryptids out there. We have Bigfoot. There's stories about Bigfoot in every corner of North America and the world. You have the skunk ape in Florida. Of course, you have the Yucca Man here in California, as well as the Almas in Russia, the Yowie in Australia, the Yeren in China. All talk about a tall, hairy, humanoid biped. There's also dozens of legends of lake monsters, from Champ in my part of the world to Nessie, of course, or Ogopogo up in Canada. There's also legends of giant birds, thunderbirds of Native American legend, teratorns, these giant birds that shouldn't exist today, that have wingspans that could span a highway, who could pick up you and I off the ground and fly us away to somewhere we probably don't want to be. As well as legends of living dinosaurs that have somehow survived for the past 66 million years. Legends like the Mokele Mbembe in the Congo, or the mountain devils in the Sierra Nevada here in California. Also legends of werewolf-type creatures that we call dogmen. In the state of Michigan, there's the Michigan Dogman, the Beast of Bray Road just next door in Wisconsin, as well as sightings of these dogman creatures in Texas in an infamous place known as the Dogman Triangle. And then you of course have your old legends from sailors exploring the oceans from hundreds of years ago, talking about sea serpents or the Kraken. Now, of course, there have been animals that were once considered cryptids that we know exist today. History backs this up. You know, these animals were once dismissed as myth. Take, for example, the okapi, which was first documented officially in the Congo in 1901, or the mountain gorilla, which was largely just a myth, a legend. People didn't believe that there was this large primate living up in the jungles, but it was officially documented in 1902. And then there's the coelacanth, a literal fossil fish that was thought to be extinct since the extinction of the dinosaurs for 66 million years, but was found alive, still swimming in our oceans in 1938. And of course, we have the giant squid, which we have had tales for centuries, and was finally documented with photographic and videographic evidence, proof really, in 2004 by Japanese oceanographers. And the point being is that we don't have all the answers, and there might be things out there still hiding, still waiting to be discovered or even rediscovered. And take the platypus, for example. That thing is a true bona fide cryptid. This thing creates an electrical charge. It goes blind in the water. It's a mammal that lays eggs. It has venomous barbs on its back feet that it just needs to kick you and you're done. So yeah, strange animals just waiting to be found. Now, in this part of the presentation, we're going to look at a few key figures that started to help bring cryptozoology into the conversation. So in the early 20th century, we have Charles Hoy Fort. And this man, he made a career around collecting something that he called damned data, accounts of events dismissed or ignored by mainstream science. Things like frogs raining out of the sky, sea monsters, phantom airships, vanishing people, All of this found a place in his writings, especially in his work, The Book of the Damned, which he published in 1919. This has been going on for over 100 years now, right? Fort didn't offer neat explanations for any of this. Instead, he kind of just relished in the chaos of unexplained phenomena and dared scientists to confront these anomalies and to try to find answers. Although he wasn't a cryptozoologist himself, cryptozoology didn't exist at that point in time. His legacy helped shape the field, and he inspired a generation of self-described Forteans to investigate the weird with curiosity and not ridicule. His influence opened the door for future cryptozoologists to consider reports of the unknown and unknown creatures seriously, not as fantasy, but as clues pointing towards an incomplete understanding of our world. Now, moving the clock forward a couple of decades here, in 1955, there was this Belgian zoologist named Bernard Heuvelmans, and he brought a real kind of scientific structure to this new emerging field that didn't really have a name yet. And he had this groundbreaking book called On the Track of Unknown Animals. And he examined hundreds of reports of these unknown animals, these cryptids, using a lens of zoology, kind of a more legitimate look at things, asking not, is this ridiculous, like the platypus, but could this be real? He coined the term cryptozoology, and he championed a kind of balanced approach. We need to apply scientific rigor, but also remain open to the idea that the folklore that people have around the world talking about these strange creatures might encode genuine biological encounters with unknown animals. Now, Heuvelmans legitimized cryptozoology to a degree. He found the International Society of Cryptozoology in the 1980s, and he strived to treat eyewitnesses with a respect that was often denied by traditional scientists, even today, and he really gave the field its name and its first backbone. Now, we're going to talk about one more person here. If Heuvelmans built this kind of academic, more scientific scaffolding around cryptozoology, Ivan T. Sanderson really brought the wonder. He was a Cambridge-trained zoologist and an adventurer. This guy was going all over the place, and he straddled the line between rigorous science and the paranormal. He proposed that our planet is home to what he called an invisible zoo, this hidden menagerie of creatures not yet acknowledged by science. And these weren't just rare species he was talking about. They were true anomalies, things that shouldn't exist. There's a famous encounter that he had while in Africa where he witnessed this gigantic bat creature, as well as looking into things like aquatic humanoids, living pterosaurs, hairy humanoids. Sanderson took all of these reports seriously, suggesting that they hinted at this unseen biosphere alongside our known one that hadn't been acknowledged by science. Now, Sanderson's most provocative idea was that of the vial vortices, these specific regions around the world where high strangeness, creatures, the unknown seemed to concentrate. And you've got window areas, of course, like the Bermuda Triangle, the Devil's Triangle off the coast of Japan, places like Chestnut Ridge in Pennsylvania, the Alaska Triangle, the Michigan Triangle, a lot of like sub areas that aren't necessarily part of these 12. But these are places where reality seems to kind of break down. Places where there are lots of UFO sightings, cryptid encounters, electromagnetic anomalies, time slips. All of these strange occurrences seem to happen in droves here. Now, Sanderson, of course, mapped these 12 zones globally, hypothesizing that they could be shaped by electromagnetic disturbances, or they might even act as gateways to other dimensions. And if that's the case, then perhaps witness stories, encounters of seeing creatures like Bigfoot blinking in and out of existence, dissolving from our reality in front of them, things that don't necessarily align with our understanding of physics. Maybe these creatures also tied to potential UFO and paranormal activity in these same areas. Maybe these aren't isolated events and that they're symptoms of a deeper interconnected reality, one that hints at a presence of some kind of intelligence manipulating what we perceive as separate phenomena. Now, here's a few other maps of some areas. In my part of the world, we have the Bridgewater Triangle in Massachusetts. Lots of stories of Bigfoot, thunderbirds, UFOs, cult activity as well, poltergeist activity. All sorts of strange things happen there. And you can find these window areas everywhere. Now, back to Sanderson, he had this cross-disciplinary approach. He was combining biology, physics, folklore, the paranormal, and he really laid the groundwork for a lot of the modern high strangeness research that we see today. He didn't just ask what were people seeing. He asked why the weird seemed to manifest in specific places. What was it about these places where the veil is thin that led the unknown to bleed through into our Earth? Now, cryptozoology, of course, began with the hunt for hidden animals, creatures like the gorilla or the okapi that science once denied but later confirmed. Now, as investigations into different stories were happening, people were digging deeper. Some cases out here didn't just defy classification. They started to veer into the truly bizarre. Witnesses reported Bigfoot sightings accompanied by things like glowing orbs, footprints that seemed to vanish mid-trail, or even episodes of telepathic mind speak. Others saw UFOs in the same place and time as cryptid encounters. All of this hinting at something a little bit stranger going on, maybe things that we haven't quite thought of or imagined yet. Now, I'm not saying that every cryptid is paranormal. Obviously, the gorilla is a flesh and blood creature, as is the okapi, the platypus, the giant squid. Those are all as real as the person next to you, the ground that we're standing on. Many may just be undiscovered animals or misidentifications, or simply a tall tale. If you look at books like Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods from the 1920s, talking about things like the slide rock bolter in Colorado, this giant land whale creature that slides down the mountain and devours everything in its path. Obviously, that's not real. We would have seen something, right? Most likely just a lumberjack's tall tale of a landslide. But the recurring patterns across many cryptid and UFO encounters, shared locations, similar witness experiences, the layers of oddity suggest that there's a deeper connection happening. Now, the lines between cryptids, UFOs, and the paranormal in some cases do seem to blur. Perhaps they've always been connected, not by accident, but maybe by design. Something might be weaving these phenomena together, something intelligent, something elusive, and just out of reach. So we're going to take a look at a few different cases here that a lot of high strangeness and things seem to overlap. The first one here is going to be talking about Chestnut Ridge. This is kind of called Pennsylvania's ongoing twilight zone. And this is in the southwestern part of the state. There's this forested stretch of the Allegheny Mountains. It's called Chestnut Ridge. And despite its quiet appearance, its beautiful scenery, it's become infamous for decades of paranormal activity. Locals report UFOs in the sky, ghost lights, orbs, Bigfoot sightings, thunderbirds with airplane-sized wingspans, strange ground-shaking mystery booms. There's a lot of weird stuff happening on Chestnut Ridge. Now, researcher Stan Gordon, who some of you might be familiar with, has called Chestnut Ridge this convergence point for high strangeness, where cryptids and UFOs don't just appear, they tend to appear much more often there. Now, generations of people have been reporting strange phenomena throughout this area for well over 150 years. You can find old reports in newspapers from the 1800s of people witnessing strange, tall, hairy humanoids. But one of the first major events in our modern era occurred in 1965 when a fiery object crash-landed near the small town of Kecksburg, which is literally right in the middle of Chestnut Ridge. Witnesses described this acorn-shaped metallic craft, and it was quickly retrieved by some kind of military presence. Officially, it was dismissed as satellite debris. The government, the military denied there ever being a presence there, but it became known as Pennsylvania's Roswell. Plenty of witnesses came forward saying that they saw this thing. And in the following years, this area started to have a lot more UFO sightings, a lot more Bigfoot sightings, kind of as if this crash may have triggered a recurrence of some phenomena and caused this flap. So let's see here. Got a little mixed up. So after Kecksburg happened, it came the 1973 Pennsylvania Bigfoot and UFO flap. And this was one of the most intense waves of high strangeness in U.S. history. There were all these clustered sightings of strange phenomena and creatures that were being spotted by residents of the area. And you can see there's newspaper reports. There were even some comics made of people that, were aware of what was going on. This all began in late December 1972, when several witnesses reported seeing this glowing white orb shedding metallic fragments as it was moving through the sky. And Stan Gordon actually managed to recover some of this debris and had it tested. It was found to be mostly just aluminum, earthly aluminum, but there was one fragment that couldn't be identified, like it was something not of this world. And soon after, locals began reporting seeing these large, foul-smelling, bipedal, hairy creatures that were starting to prowl near farms near the town of Greensburg. And people, these farmers, were having their chickens being slaughtered by some unknown creature. Family dogs were being found dead in very brutal ways. And as the spring arrived that year, things just kept escalating. More people were seeing these 8, 9, 10-foot tall Bigfoot-like beings. Sometimes they were seen with white fur, sometimes brown. One even appeared to be wearing a shimmering metallic suit in one report, which is very interesting. I always love when they're wearing the skinny spandex spacesuits. That's always fun. And simultaneously, UFOs of all shapes and sizes were being seen. You've got your classic flying saucer, the cigar-shaped or the tic-tac style, triangles, even arrowhead-shaped UAPs, UFOs, were being seen crossing the skies above Chestnut Ridge. Some encounters involved both phenomena. In March of '73, multiple witnesses claimed to see a glowing oval-shaped UFO hovering above a field, and then they were watching as these two giant hairy humanoids were descending down a beam of light. That same month, a father and son were out hiking on a trail in Beaver County, and the son saw this massive Bigfoot that seemed to be carrying a glowing orb. Meanwhile, his father is looking out in this open field and sees a silver disc really low to the ground. And the son calls out to his dad to be like, "Hey, there's a Bigfoot over here." like carrying this orb. And as soon as he got his father's attention and they started kind of realizing what was going on, this UFO shot off, disappeared, and then they saw and heard this Bigfoot creature let out a loud shriek, and it just kind of vanished into the woods. Now, one of the most dramatic cases came on October 25th of that year in Fayette County. People were seeing this red orb that had landed in a pasture, and they saw at the same time these two giant hairy humanoids emerge from the woods nearby. And one of the witnesses, this man, he had a rifle with him, and he fired off 2 shots at this thing. You know, what would you do in that situation? I mean, you've got this otherworldly stuff going on, so of course he takes a shot at it, and instantly this red UAP blinks out of sight, and the creatures disappear. Investigators later found that there were oversized, like, humanoid footprint tracks, and there was also this glowing patch of flattened grass in this field. And the witnesses actually claimed that these creatures that were these Bigfoot creatures actually dematerialized, like they were being beamed up or portaled to somewhere else. And by the year's end, dozens and dozens of Pennsylvanians had reported similar encounters. Now, Stan Gordon, bless his soul, he set up a hotline and that thing was ringing off the hook 24 hours a day. He was overwhelmed with hotline calls. He was getting out there, doing footprint castings, getting hair samples, interviewing the witnesses, really doing the groundwork to get to the bottom of what was going on. And of course, the media was skeptical about all of this, you know, trying to paint people as crazy and not knowing what they're talking about. But despite that skepticism, the consistency of reports was hard to ignore. Gordon urged calm and warned people, hunters especially, who are going out hiking in the woods or if they're going hunting, not to shoot at things that they didn't understand, mostly for caution and safety. You never know. Someone could be dressed up like a Bigfoot out there, and you don't want to have anyone get hurt. Now, by early 1974, this flap ended as suddenly as it began. All of these reports just dropped off a cliff. Gordon called this the silent invasion, but Chestnut Ridge didn't necessarily go quiet. A year later, in October of 74, there was a report of a woman living deep out in the mountains, and she reported that this Bigfoot-type creature was trying to break into her cabin one night. This thing busted open the door, and thankfully she had a firearm with her, and she shot at this thing point-blank range. And the second that happened, it vanished into a flash of light, leaving marks on the door from the gunshot. She called the police. They arrived, found no evidence of a body, no blood or anything, but this woman's experience, her reaction to the event, and the physical evidence on the door from her shooting her gun suggests that something did actually happen. Now, strange activity has continued here for decades. In the 80s, motorists were reporting gargoyle-like creatures flying overhead. In the 90s, there were several sightings of black panthers making headlines despite there being no native population of panthers in Pennsylvania. And year after year, Stan Gordon is continuing to receive calls and reports. One man might see a disc-shaped craft hovering over a valley. A nearby farmer might hear the guttural howls of a Bigfoot out in the woods. There's one case, before we move on to the next year, in May of '88, there were 2 fishermen near the town of Derry that saw this bright orange light up in the sky, and then it just blinked out. And immediately after, they saw this massive, hairy, bipedal creature crashing through the trees as if it was connected in some way. Maybe it had just hopped out of this UFO and was going on about its business. But today, this area, Chestnut Ridge, is a classic window area. It's this place where the veil seems thin and strange phenomena seems to converge. There's documentaries out there that you can watch, like Invasion on Chestnut Ridge by Small Town Monsters, which explores deeper into the mysteries and gets some boots on the ground interviews with people. It's a really good documentary. Check it out. But no single explanation holds as to why all this stuff happens here. Some theorize there might be magnetic anomalies, ancient curses from long, long ago, or simply that aliens like our mountains. Yes. So, whatever the cause, this ridge is a mystery. It's one of the clearest places on the map where UFOs, cryptids, and high strangeness all seems to collide. Now, case 2. I'm sure everyone's familiar with this one. It's a very well-known case, which happens to be that of an isolated cattle ranch in northeastern Utah's Uinta Basin, a place that we now call Skinwalker Ranch, where an unsuspecting family found themselves living in a literal real-life X-Files episode in the mid-1990s. Now, from the moment that Terry and Gwen Sherman bought this 512-acre property, not knowing the lengthy history of high strangeness that preceded their ownership of it, that had surrounded not only the ranch, but the entire Uinta Basin, they soon realized that something was deeply off about this place. They would frequently spot UFOs in the sky, strange lights seen above the ranch, but that wasn't the only thing that was going on. The Shermans also encountered mysterious creatures on their land, beasts that seemed to defy explanation, along with many other paranormal events. One of the Shermans' first bizarre encounters was with an animal that walked straight out of legend. I mean, the wolf. Early on in their time at the ranch, they encountered this giant wolf. Now, one day, Terry Sherman was loading some stuff into his truck with the help of his son, and they saw this massive wolf appear on the horizon. And this animal came up to where they were on the property, which was right next to a cattle pen that they had recently loaded a whole bunch of prize Angus calves into. Now, this wolf was said to be unnaturally large. Terry said it was about 3 times the size of a regular wolf, which wolves are pretty large to begin with if you've ever stood next to one in person. Not an animal you really want to mess with, but this one was oddly tame in its demeanor despite its intimidating presence. And this thing came right up to Terry and his son, and Terry watched kind of in amazement and astonishment because this thing allowed his son to kind of go up and just pet it. And they thought it was like pretty tame. And his son was 6 feet tall. And according to Terry, this thing came up to his chest. Like we're talking dire wolf territory or bigger. And of course, those animals have been extinct for thousands and thousands of years. Now, shortly after that, there was one of the calves stuck his head out of the cattle pen, and this wolf with lightning fast speed clamped his jaws onto the calf's head and started trying to pull it out of the pen. And Terry and his son wanted to save the calf, so they start pummeling this thing. They're kicking it, they're trying to punch it. They grab a baseball bat at one point, and it's doing absolutely nothing. So Terry grabs his Magnum, 357 Magnum, fires 3 shots, point blank range, directly into its side, and it doesn't faze this thing at all. He does 3 more shots into it, and finally this wolf lets the calf go. And it just kind of looks at him, walks away, and keeps walking in a very calm pace. Really strange. You'd think that this animal would be showing that it was in pain and maybe collapsing from getting shot 6 times. So By the time this thing's about 40 yards away, he grabs his 30-06, lines up the shot, shoots at it, takes a chunk out of its side, and this thing just looks back and stares at them and just continues to walk. Like, it wasn't phased at all, which suggests that whatever this thing was might not have been from here. Now, Terry and his son, of course, wanted to help keep their cattle safe, so they tracked this thing throughout the property. And eventually, they tracked the prints to a creek bed and into the mud, and they saw that the tracks just stopped abruptly. There was no side-to-side jumping. It didn't go into a river or anything like that. It was like the creature just vanished. Now, that was really only the beginning of the high strangeness that the Shermans would experience there. Now, the wolves actually would appear from time to time again. Gwen Sherman one time spoke about driving home and one of these giant wolves just coming out of nowhere, walking right up to her car, to her driver's side window, looking at in there at her, had these like icy blue eyes, and then it just kind of walked off, like it's saying like, hey, I know you're here. Nothing you can do about me, apparently. Now, beyond the wolves, the Shermans also would see colored orbs of light zipping over their pastures. Sometimes the lights were also distant stars up in the sky where you think it was a star, but then it started moving and dancing erratically. Lights moving and stopping on a dime and making a 90-degree turn, which is, something that we can't really do. And this activity was also spooking their livestock. They would also experience the missing object phenomenon, where you're working with something, you put it down, turn around to do something else, and then you turn back around, that object is there, but it's not. It's totally disappeared, which would drive them crazy. They're tearing their house apart for a week and they can't find whatever it was. Say it was a cooking spoon or a whisk or something like that, some kind of tool. And then 2 weeks later, this thing would show up in a spot that they already checked randomly. And this would just totally confound and I imagine anger them very much, because I always hate it when I have missing object phenomena happen to me. Now, beyond that, there was other poltergeist type activity that they would experience. And then some more sinister things started happening. Cattle mutilations, outright disappearances of their livestock, even if they were corralled for the night. They couldn't explain what was going on. Whoops. Now, the Shermans understandably wanted out of the ranch. And in 1997, it was sold to Robert Bigelow, Bigelow Aerospace, very famous billionaire who is known to be well involved with studying the unexplained. And a lot of strange things happened during those years as well. There was one chilling close encounter with this unknown humanoid, which is a story that I always look towards. I like this one. It's Colin Kelleher, who co-authored The Hunt for the Skinwalker with George Knapp. He was a biochemist with NIDS, the National Institute for Discovery Science. And so he was conducting a stakeout one night with the research team, and they spotted this large creature perched in a tree through the night vision scopes on the ranch perimeter. This creature was about 50 yards away, excuse me, and it was lying on a branch about 20 feet up. And through their night vision scope, they could see this thing's eyes, and it knew they were there. It was looking right back at them. And it just it was there. And it knew that they were there, and it was just kind of like a stare off. Now, they could tell that this entity was humanoid in shape and also quite large. And it seemed to have this casual confidence, like it knew that they couldn't do anything to it. And so they decided to fire off a shot across the bow just to see what would happen. And in that instant, this creature vanished into nothingness. It just disappeared. So Colum and the team rushed to this tree, but they didn't find a body. They didn't find blood. There was no trace other than a singular oval-shaped strange footprint that also had a couple of sharp claw marks that were digging into the ground. So it seems like there was something non-human that had been there, and then it had just blinked out of our reality. And these encounters at Skinwalker Ranch weren't one-offs. They were part of this endless series of anomalies. Cattle vanishing, being found mutilated with surgical precision, strange voices echoing from invisible sources, and even portal-like phenomena were reported. On one occasion, researchers observed a bright orange doorway of light floating in midair through which they saw this dark creature crawl out of. Talk about creepy. If you're wondering what the intent of this other intelligence is, I mean, we don't know for sure, but this left investigators all their instruments spiking off the charts, and they saw this portal, this entryway just close, and that stuff's still happening there today. I had the privilege of speaking with Travis Taylor last summer, and the idea that I got from him was that whatever's going on out there seems to be some other dimension. Something is coming through that's not from here. Now, it's convinced many, of course, that this ranch and other places sit on these kind of nexus points between dimensions where otherworldly beings, cryptids, aliens, can come and go freely. Local Ute tribal folklore already has talked about and warned of things like skinwalkers, shape-shifting malevolent entities roaming that area, of course, giving the ranch its name. And over the decades, everyone from indigenous people to federal agencies have taken note of the Uinta Basin's weirdness. Locals casually call this place UFO Alley due to the frequency of how many sightings are there, which you can read a lot more about this in books like the Utah UFO Display by Frank Salisbury. It's a good book. Now, at Skinwalker Ranch, the traditional boundaries between UFO encounter and cryptid sightings seem to blur. One moment, you're aiming at a flesh and blood, or at least you think, wolf, and the next thing you know, it's a phantom. It's disappeared entirely. High-tech surveillance that was set up in the late 90s captured plenty of phenomena like electromagnetic spikes, infrared images of unseen forms, but frustratingly, very little hard evidence. The entities, whatever they are, seem to toy with observers and consistently evade capture or clear recording, even today with the current team that's out there under Brandon Fugel. So whatever's going on out there, it seems evident that multiple kinds of phenomena are happening together, implying that there could be some kind of common source in these window areas. Now, one more case here, my favorite case. The Mothman, of course. This is like the king of all manner of high strangeness with cases. And the story of Mothman is complicated, so I'll try to be brief here. The incident that really pushed this story into the public eye was the story of two young couples, the Scarberrys and the Mallettes of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. One night they were out on a joyride. It was November 15th, 1966. Roger Scarberry was driving his Chevy Bel Air, and they were headed to a place north of town called the TNT area, which was basically a old World War II munitions plant that had long since been abandoned. Rumors of experiments happening, underground facilities, and that kind of stuff will pop up if you look into this case further. But that's where they stumbled into legend. Now, they were driving up near the old power plant that was up in the TNT area, and Linda Scarberry caught sight of these two glowing red lights in the dark. And she quickly realized that these were not lights on a building. There was no electricity running up there, at least there shouldn't have been. They were eyes that belonged to this tall, dark gray figure that was lurking by the road, which got illuminated just a moment later by the headlights of the car. And everyone in the car saw this thing And in a flash, this humanoid creature spread out a 10-foot wingspan. Its appendages were huge, right? And it shot straight up in the air. So naturally, I think like a Scooby-Doo episode, they all screamed and hit the gas and tried to drive back to town. But that wasn't the last of it. To their horror, this winged humanoid creature started chasing them, easily matching their car's speed, gliding above and behind them. Roger Scarberry claimed that he took his Chevy Bel Air up to 100 miles per hour as they were racing back to Point Pleasant. Eventually, this creature, Mothman, veered off into a field, and they thought they lost it. They wound up going back after. They were like, oh, that was nothing. That was just like a bird or something like that. And they go back into the TNT area, and sure enough, Mothman's there again waiting for them. This time, Mothman flew off and didn't chase them. And that's when they decided to go to the sheriff's department in town. And they reported to the sheriff's deputy Millard Halstead, that they saw this creature. They were quoted as saying it was like a man with wings. It wasn't anything you could imagine. And thus, the story of Mothman was born. But it was all the other things that began to happen afterwards that suggest that Mothman may have been more than just a cryptid, and that something far stranger was going on. In the days that followed, more residents around Point Pleasant began to encounter this mysterious flying creature. Mary Heyer, who was a local newspaper reporter at the Point Pleasant Register, wrote an article titled "Couples See a Man-Sized Bird, Creature, Something," which captured the public's attention. Sightings started pouring in. As it turned out, there were some gravediggers in the nearby town of Clendenin, West Virginia, that said that they saw this brown winged creature, this humanoid creature that was hopping between the trees as they were digging a grave. And that happened just a couple days before the Scarberry and the Malletts encounter. Two volunteer firemen reported seeing this huge bird with red eyes. There was a woman living outside of Point Pleasant that reported this Mothman creature was standing in her yard, and when her German Shepherd ran towards it, both the dog and the creature vanished into the woods. Sadly, the dog was never seen again. But the Mothman wasn't the only oddity haunting Point Pleasant in 1966 and 1977, or 67, sorry. Alongside the giant winged apparition, other phenomena started occurring that made this flap of activity even stranger. Unexplained lights were seen streaking across the skies down there. In fact, by December of that year, later in December, Mary Heyer was also reporting on UFO sightings. One witness described seeing a saucer-shaped object hovering above the TNT area, not far from where Mothman was seen. And over the next year, there were over 100 reports from locals claiming to see these mystery lights in the sky, crafts that they couldn't explain. It seemed as if whatever energy had unleashed Mothman was also drawing in strange things from elsewhere. And now we enter into John Keel territory. John Keel was a journalist and a UFO researcher from New York, and he started hearing about these Mothman reports. He arrives in Point Pleasant in '67, sets up shop to investigate, and he quickly realized that the Mothman sightings, the UFO reports, and other weird incidents were all happening simultaneously. Now, Keel interviewed witnesses of the Mothman and also those who had seen UFOs or met strange personalities on back roads. One traveling salesman, a man named Woody Derenberger, famously claimed to have encountered this odd, telepathic, grinning man named Indrid Cold along Route 77 outside of Parkersburg, West Virginia, after being stopped by his kerosene lamp-shaped UFO on the highway around the same time. It may not have been necessarily related to Mothman, but the fact that they were so close together geographically and also happening that same in that same era is very interesting. So as Keel dug deeper, locals confided in him about another unsettling development: visits from the ominous men in black. And as we all know, Men in Black stories are very strange. Several eyewitnesses, including Mary Hyre herself, were approached by these pale black-suited strangers who warned them and often not quite natural-sounding voices, almost robotic in some cases, to stop talking about all the weird things that were happening. These men had odd mannerisms and seemed to know things that they shouldn't. Keel himself began receiving bizarre, garbled phone calls late at night with these electronic tones and sometimes an otherworldly voice that was repeating fragments of his personal conversations. Really weird stuff. It's like as if some intelligence out there was monitoring and messing with anyone that was delving into the mystery of Mothman. So for 13 months, Point Pleasant was caught up in this web of high strangeness. The Mothman, with his fiery red eyes and massive wings, continued to startle residents. UFOs continued to be sighted, glowing orbs zipping all over the place. Even the occasional report of more solid, structured-looking craft. People no longer knew what to fear more: this giant winged creature or the UFOs in the sky. People were trying to figure out what was going on. Parents were keeping their children close to home at night. Some people were wondering if this was Judgment Day or the work of the devil. John Keel, in his investigation, started to believe that all of this phenomena may have been interconnected somehow. Now, tragically, the Mothman saga in Point Pleasant came to its conclusion on December 15th, 1967, when the Silver Bridge spanning the Ohio River collapsed during rush hour, killing over 40 people. This disaster shocked the town and sent shockwaves through the country, and it abruptly ended the Mothman sightings. There were no more reports of him after the bridge fell, at least for several decades, and now we have some more interesting potential sightings of Mothman-type creature in Chicago, but that's for another presentation. In hindsight, though, some people have interpreted Mothman as a prophetic omen of the tragedy, a harbinger of doom, if you will. And this idea was popularized in Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies. Others believe that the timing was just coincidence, but perhaps the same energy that drew Mothman and UFOs to this area, maybe it destabilized physical reality in odd ways. But to this day, Mothman remains this enduring mystery of cryptozoology, and the Point Pleasant Flap is a classic example of overlapping phenomena. Men in Black, UFOs, a flying monster, it's got it all in one region. And it's no wonder why researchers see this case as evidence of a kind of overarching nexus at work, suggesting that there's something else going on. So what do we make of this, and how do we all tie it all together? One pattern that jumps out from different case studies and how locations become hotspots of weirdness, we call these window areas, or as Ivan T. Sanderson put it, vile vortices, places where these strange events recur over and over, sometimes across decades or centuries. It's as if something in these areas acts like a doorway between worlds, letting odd cryptids and creatures and UFOs slip in and out. There's just so much going on, especially with the case studies that we just went over. Now, oopsie. So how do we explain what's going on with these doorways? So let's turn back to John Keel, because he's very important with all of this. So in investigating the Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, Keel found himself entangled in this web of unexplainable series of events. Witnesses didn't just see Mothman, they also reported UFOs, encounters with Men in Black, poltergeist-like activity, prophetic dreams. Keel was a journalist by trade, but those experiences pushed him to question the conventional aliens from outer space narrative about all of this. Keel wrote in, Keel wrote that he had abandoned the extraterrestrial phenomena hypothesis after his fieldwork revealed an astonishing overlap between psychic phenomena and UFOs. UFOs would appear in the sky and a monster would be in the woods. suggesting that there could be some connection between the two, maybe some kind of ancient Earth-based intelligence that he famously dubbed ultraterrestrials. Whoops, I had a little technical difficulties here. There we go. Now, unlike ETs from a distant planet, ultraterrestrials could be native to Earth or another realm or dimension intertwined with ours. He suggested they're part of a superspectrum of reality, and this invisible spectrum of energies or dimensions that our limited human senses can't normally detect. Every so often, these beings project into our world, perhaps by shifting frequencies, assuming forms that humans can understand, or at least attempt to understand. Think of it as like dialing into different radio stations. Perhaps these beings have that kind of technology or a natural ability to do that altogether. Keel believed that ultraterrestrials are shapeshifters, master deceivers. In different eras in our history, they appeared as gods, fairies, goblins, demons, ghosts. And in modern times, we interpret them as aliens or cryptids. It's like this grand cosmic game of camouflage that alters its appearance in tandem with human development. If you're in a window area and you expect to see a UFO, you just might see one, while another person in the same place is expecting to see a Bigfoot, they might see that instead. I'm reminded of this story of one of the guests I had on my podcast. I believe it was Les Velez of Opus. Told me this story that he was driving in a car one day and with his sister, and they drove over a bridge, and he looked down towards the river bank below, and he saw a Bigfoot down there, and it was looking right back at him. And so he tries to get his sister's attention, and she looks down, doesn't see anything. Now, the thing is that she was very skeptical. And it's important to be skeptical, right? But she absolutely didn't believe in anything paranormal, Bigfoot, UFO, that kind of thing, where he was more open-minded. So his idea was like, maybe this thing, whatever it was, it allowed itself to be seen by him, but because his sister didn't believe, she didn't see anything at all. Now, Keel half-jokingly said once that ufology is basically like modern demonology. Not to imply that these entities are literally demons or anything like that, but they come from this similar mystical layer of reality with good guys, bad guys, playing tricks on us, playing tricks on humanity, a kind of cosmic trickster, if you will. And this notion kind of casts a new light on our case studies. Maybe things like the Mothman, the Skinwalker, Bigfoot, UAPs. They're all costumes worn by the same multifaceted phenomenon, which kind of has some big implications. Keel's ultra-terrestrial concept paints these phenomena as kind of transmogrifiers from next door, not outer space. But he wasn't alone in rethinking UFOs and cryptids. Even the scientists who started out on the nuts and bolts UFO idea eventually felt that the truth might be far stranger. Enter J. Allen Hynek. And he was kind of the ultimate insider turned believer. Hynek was an astronomer who worked for Project Blue Book, as we all know, initially debunking UFO cases back in the 50s and 60s. And he encountered case after case that defied easy explanations. And over the years, his stance evolved from it can't be, therefore it isn't, to something's going on here, and it's not just spacecraft. And by the time Blue Book closed, Hynek was publicly questioning the extraterrestrial hypothesis as the whole answer. He introduced the term high strangeness to describe cases with absurd or paranormal overtones. For example, a UFO landing followed by a poltergeist activity in a witness's home. How do flying saucers reconcile with ghostly knocks on your walls at night? Or with, say, a Bigfoot sighting in the same area? These were the puzzles that Hynek wrestled with. And so in 1975, he had this book that he co-wrote with Jacques Vallée, and he floated the idea of interlocking universes. Maybe these phenomena come from another reality that exists side by side with ours. And in a dialogue with Vallée, Hynek theorized that our space-time might just be a slice of a larger continuum, and other slices, other dimensions, could intersect with ours unseen. To illustrate, he offered a kind of metaphor. Imagine trying to explain television to a remote tribe in the Amazon jungle. Invisible TV signals are coursing through their huts, but without a receiver, they'd never know. To them, a TV set would seem magical, pulling in sounds and images out of thin air. Hynek suggested that UFOs and these types of things might be like those signals, normally invisible, but occasionally tuned in to our reality under the right conditions or right frequencies. In short, maybe aliens aren't from Alpha Centauri, but from the next dimension over. Now, what led Hynek down this path of thought? Simply put, the evidence. By the 1970s, he openly said that the UFO phenomena was real, but not likely a single thing. It could have had several aspects or sources working in tandem. For instance, many UFO encounters left physical traces like radiation or marks in the soil, which suggests tangible craft, of course, supporting the classic ET visit, but many encounters also had surreal elements as well, creatures that vanished into thin air, time distortions, reports of telepathic messages, and cases where after a UFO sighting, people were experiencing ghostly phenomena in their homes, and it was utterly perplexing. He believed that there was sufficient evidence to defend both cases. Maybe it's like an all of the above thing, but it really took his journey took him from cataloging these metallic discs in the sky and trying to debunk everything to thinking about a form of magic sufficiently advanced to be science. He didn't abandon the idea of extraterrestrial life, but came to believe that the strangest UFO cases hinted at a phenomena that's part physical, part psychological, this trickster that lives at the edges of our understanding. It's a very similar conclusion to Keel's, although maybe arrived at from a more scientific angle. And now, of course, we just mentioned Jacques Vallée. He's also another important person to look at when we're talking about these ideas. And he actually began kind of as Hynek's protege, a student and a collaborator. And he spent a lot of time logging UFO reports and searching for patterns. And what he found really only deepened the mystery. Vallée noticed that UFO sightings didn't start in 1947 with Roswell. If you look back through history, people were seeing strange lights and meeting otherworldly beings under different guises dating back century, even millennia. Think of all of our legends and folklore with all these different strange creatures. And this culminated in his book, Passport to Magonia, of course, where he suggested that UFO encounters are modern folklore of a sort, cut from the same cloth as fairy tales and mythical creature sightings. The space age imagery might be new, but the core of this phenomena, entities that can control what witnesses see, even play with their minds, has been with us since time immemorial. You've got stories like peasants in the Middle Ages that are speaking of being led astray by trickster spirits into the woods. Today we talk about alien abductions. And Vallée asked, is it all part of the same phenomena, just wearing different masks? And he didn't stop there, of course. By analyzing waves of sightings, he observed many different patterns. UFO flaps would cluster and then vanish. Sometimes the absurd details of encounters, nonsensical messages given to contactees, or absurd-looking occupants seen collecting soil samples from the roadside made him think that something deeper was at play rather than literal aliens doing science experiments. The sheer number of close encounters also seemed far too high for simply scouting or research. Why would extraterrestrials repeatedly perform such theatrics? And he concluded that the UFO phenomena might be less of a physical invasion and more of a system influencing human consciousness, which led him to his control system hypothesis. And the idea is a little bit startling. What if UFOs, and by extension, related paranormal events, are part of a deliberate mechanism to shape our beliefs, our myths, our technological outlook? Not necessarily a human conspiracy, but this other intelligence acting like a cosmic puppeteer, sometimes showing us absurd dreamlike scenarios to broaden our minds and perhaps to subtly direct the cultural narrative. In Vallet's view, this was a feature of the theory. He once said that the phenomena is a lot smarter than we are, and it kind of uses humor at another level, almost like it enjoys putting on a magic show to confound us. Now, by the 1970s, he wrote how the pattern of UFO appearances resembled this schedule of reinforcement, akin to like how a psychologist might give lab animals rewards in a pattern to shape their behavior. One year, UFOs are everywhere, and it sparks this huge wave of interest. Everyone wants to know what's going on, and then the next year, nothing's going on. The UFOs have vanished, and skeptics will come in and say, "Oh, it was just nothing." And it's this strange cycle that keeps our society unsure about what's really going on, but also still intrigued. And if an intelligence is orchestrating this, it's certainly playing a long game. And it may explain why hard proof is always just out of reach. The phenomena teases us, but it avoids resolution, perhaps intentionally. Most importantly, Vallet also pointed out the logical problems with the ET hypothesis that most people cling to. For example, reports show UFOs morphing shapes or splitting into multiple objects. Think of some of the recent footage that was released in recent years. The Aguadilla UFO video in particular is very interesting. Not typical behavior for nuts and bolts type spacecraft, you'd think. But despite thousands of reports, there's still a lack of concrete evidence or clear intent that we would expect from alien visitors, at least from our perspective and our understanding. And as he summarized his research, he thought that the evidence of UFOs suggests kind of radical alternatives. These objects can manipulate space and time and seem to have been entwined with humanity throughout our history. That sounds a lot less like astronauts from Zeta Reticuli and more like interdimensional actors on a stage that is our world. So perhaps there are these doorways or window areas where reality bleeds through more easily, leading to all these sightings. Perhaps our consciousness, our expectations, our fears, our beliefs partly shapes what comes through. It's kind of like the universe is holding up a funhouse mirror, showing us a reflection that's sometimes aliens, sometimes monsters, and it's testing us in some way. And maybe there is a unified theory to this after all. And I know we're getting close to the end of the presentation here, but let's look at a couple of shared patterns that you can find among these phenomena. There's several very interesting ones. Light orbs, EMF malfunctions, lost time, trickster behavior, that kind of thing. So glowing orbs, of course, show up in both UFO and cryptid cases. They drift through forests, zip through skies, often appear before or after encounters. And no one really knows exactly what these are. Are they conscious? Are they ghost lights? Are they probes? Nobody knows. They appear without warning, seem to move intelligently, and then vanish before you can even get close. Definitely seems like a strange part of this phenomenon. We also have EMF malfunctions, missing time. When strange events occur, our technology seems to malfunction often. Cameras fail, freshly charged batteries will drain instantly. Cars might stall out, such as in the Close Encounters. Compasses will spin. Both of these types of things seem to happen frequently with certain types of cryptid sightings and UFO encounters. And let's see, what's next here? We got foul odors, of course, one of the most not pleasant parts about this. A little less glamorous. Many Bigfoot witnesses, of course, always report a strong stench described as rotting garbage or wet dog. The skunk ape in Florida, of course, is named for this very reason. But it's not just a trait with Bigfoot and other cryptids. You, of course, have the case of the Flatwoods Monster in 1952, which featured this sulfurous odor that made witnesses gag and made their eyes burn. Sulfur-like smells also appear at various UFO landing sites and paranormal events. And it's just one of those things that connects these two. Glowing eyes is also another big thing. You have Mothman with his red eyes, of course. There's the case of the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins who had these, they were seen after a UFO was seen darting across the sky in Kentucky, and these goblin-like creatures came out of the woods, and they had these large yellow glowing eyes. So sometimes Bigfoot are reported having eye shine. Even there are Men in Black reports that include glinting, unnatural eyes on top of all their other unnatural seeming features. And there's also disappearing tracks, disappearing evidence. We have, the case of the wolf at Skinwalker Ranch, where the tracks just end. Plenty of Bigfoot cases out there also talk about a very similar thing. And then there's also the psychic impressions and altered consciousness. Encounters with the unknown seems to often trigger altered states. You might feel watched, you might receive telepathic communications from either a Bigfoot with mind speak or telepathic communications with a gray alien. Now, all of this, the point I'm trying to get to is all of this stuff seems to kind of hint at a kind of trickster intelligence that's interdimensional or ultra-terrestrial. This idea suggesting that these entities aren't bound by our reality. They might just feed off of us in some way, our confusion. Maybe they're trying to guide us in some way. It's all kind of unknown. Keel put it this way: if you collect enough weird coincidences and you see a pattern, you might get this tapestry of paranormal. Now, in the end, I think it's important for us to realize that, we might not have a solid answer for all of this, and that's okay. It's part of the journey in all of this and trying to understand our reality. But maybe we can ask better questions. In fields like these, certainty is of course rare. So instead of maybe asking if UFOs are real or fake, a better question might be, what do we see out there? Consistent patterns in UFO sightings. What does it tell us about a potential underlying reality? And similarly with Bigfoot, instead of asking if it's a real ape or a hoax, we should maybe ask, why do cultures worldwide share legends of hairy wildmen? And what could that signify for our understanding of our world? And by reframing our inquiries, we open ourselves to new insights. We stop seeing these phenomena as black or white and start seeing the shades of gray in between. So that's my presentation, everyone. Thank you very much. If anyone has any questions, I'm not sure if we get a mic over there yet, but I think we get a minute or two if anyone has any questions. Otherwise, I'll be hanging out in the lobby later. But thank you again. Oh, you have a question out there?
Yeah, okay, first with the theory of industrial, the John Keel or John Valet?
So who came first with the theory of ultraterrestrials, John Keel or Jacques Vallée? So John Keel is kind of the guy who coined the term ultraterrestrial, these beings that exist on a different frequency or a different dimension. And Jacques Vallée's idea is very similar. His idea was the control system, that whatever this intelligence is, it seems to have been with us for a very long time. And it's somehow, it's either guiding our development in a way, but it's unknown exactly what, the intent or what the goal is. And I'm not sure if we'll ever find out.
John Valet's opinions have changed over the years.
Where's the mic out there? Sorry. So has Jacques Vallée's opinions changed over time about this theory? As far as my understanding, it seems like he's still very much along these same ideas. I think over time that there's just something not from our dimension that's out there affecting us in some way. All right. What's your question?
Do you believe that the entities you're talking about are more like, say, Doug Harson, Kaylee, Brill, like, is it the same entity Ruby and Elite were communicating on the temple? Is it the same sort of beyond the veil entity that's flying popping up in a full area as well as that of marriage between the experimental and experimental?
Yeah. So are these entities that I'm talking about cryptids, UFOs? Is it along the same lines of Jack Parsons and that kind of thing? I think that it's entirely possible. People may have a way to channel these things, right? And if these things are from another dimension, I'm not sure how many other dimensions there might be, but I think it is possible. When you look at it like that. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, if no one else has any other questions, thank you again so much.